the State Water Resources Control Board presentation discussion on draft policy for in-stream flows in North Coast streams related to AB 2121. This comes about as a direction of the board directed me on April 10th to forward a letter to the Water Resources Agency of our opposition, our concern, implementation of the policy of AB 2121. I want to thank the Water Resources Agency for being here today and accepting our invitation. And I know it was probably not a tremendously welcomed invitation, but I do appreciate you meeting our request and being here today. And at this point, I'll turn it over to our Water Agency Director, Mr. Sanford.
All right. Well, I think pretty much you covered the basics here of why we're here today. Obviously, we are very pleased that the State Board is here, staff, and I'll introduce them in a moment, or I'll let Steve introduce his staff. Very simply stated, the North Coast in-stream flow policy establishes guidelines for maintaining in-stream flows for the protection of fish resources, and more specifically prescribes limitations on the season of diversion, minimum bypass flows, and the maximum annual cumulative diversion. And I must say it's nice to see a pretty full house here today, because this is not a trivial matter, as any reallocation or allocation of water in the West is. Yet as important as this issue is, there still is a lot of confusion about the policy itself, and a lot of people are not aware that the policy is even being contemplated. So again, I want to thank the State Board for coming here today. They have a presentation which they'll make, which will be followed by questions from the board, and then it's my understanding that the rest of the Q&A will be allocated for the audience. So with that, Steve, would you like to?
Chairman Wattberger, Supervisors, I'm Steve Herrera. I'm with the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Water Rights. We're here today to discuss the policy that's developed under Assembly Bill AB 2121. Briefly, I'd like to introduce some of the staff that I have with me here today. We have some of our engineering staff and our scientists. This includes Karen Miller, Eric Oppenheimer, Aaron Miller, and Katie Washburn. Typically, we've had a lot of people that discuss and ask us questions about AB 2121 and the policy, the draft policy that the board has circulated for review and comment. What I'd like to do, we had asked for some questions and maybe some guidance on what your issues are, and perhaps some things that you'd like us to address. Frankly, I reviewed that, and it would take quite a little bit of time to go through everything that you provided us. So what I perhaps maybe would do is give you a brief history of how the policy came about and why we're here and what the policy is designed to do, and I'll try and be very brief with that. And then also we can attempt to address some of these questions. Specifically, we're prepared for that. Also, the staff that I have today are some of the technical folks that drafted the policy, helped in the drafting of the policy, along with our consultants. So they're very, very skilled and knowledgeable this, so if we want to get into any details, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
But again, we're here at your invitation, and we appreciate that. We've held several meetings before and in open public forum, and we found that it's actually better to have maybe a one-on-one discussion as we are having with you today, and perhaps some of your constituents here, rather than have an open forum to get into technical aspects and discussions of regression curves and some of those things that are pretty detailed, and it's a narrower audience when we do that.
Okay. You have a comment first?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question for you, sir. How will the board staff view any of the comments made today by either this board, its members, or the interested public that's here?
It's our intent today is to attempt to discuss the policy as drafted, not necessarily receive comments, and we're not going to collect the comments today for formal response after the May 1 deadline, which I'll talk about that in a second. But we're here to try and maybe provide clarification on the draft policy. But the comments and concerns we hear, certainly we will note them, But as far as formal responses being prepared by the State Water Board, those will be addressed on things that are provided to us in writing or in some formal form by the May 1 deadline as comments to the draft policy.
In some other formal forum?
Well, in some cases we accept emails, we accept, not necessarily written analyses, but comments to the board on the policy.
So any comments made today, unless they're in writing, you will listen to them, but they're not official to be responded to. I mean, we're happy to give you a copy of the tape if you'd like to have that, if that helps you, if nobody can't take notes. But I think what my concern is we've asked for a forum up here for folks to have that opportunity. My hope is that when you hear those comments, they will be more than just listened to, that they will be addressed.
They'll
and
be
considered strongly.
We'll consider them, but again, the board itself will provide formal comments or response to comments that are provided in writing or in some formal manner to the State Water Board. We represent the board, but I'm not the board.
Thank you.
So as an example, if I may jump in here, I did send you a fax copy of these questions. I think you referred to those.
Yes, I have them here.
So those will be included in as written documentation and answered after May?
If you so desire, we will consider these as your written comments, and we can incorporate them in our formal response.
Okay, well,
I was not under the standing they were the formal comments of the county Board of Supervisors, excuse me. But
well, these were a series of questions that I submitted to you in response to your request
right.
for some questions so that you could be prepared to help explain the policy, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe these are certainly intended to be included into and ask for answers in the long run.
Well, in some respects, let me indicate this does become part of the record on the development of the policy. But as far as formal response to comments, if so noted, that's your desire, we will consider them as formal comments on the policy, and we will respond to these specifically.
Okay. All right.
I think our intent today, though, was to provide you clarification and some of the response to what you provided,
Sure.
and which, again, it may change your comments to us in the long run.
Sure. Supervisor Pinches.
You mentioned the May deadline, but in the law, the copy I have here says that this policy was says on or before January 1st, 2007, the board shall adopt the principles of practice. So was there an extension of that?
Yes, there has, and perhaps maybe I should give a brief background of the policy and where we're at in the process, and it will explain a little bit of these deadlines because there's more than just the January 1, 2007.
Next question I read the first meeting I went to on this. I was told that the river watershed was out of this area.
Pardon me, I didn't quite hear.
I was told that the Eel River watershed was out of this area.
That's correct.
It is out of it?
It's out, yes.
How come it says from was that been amended after this bill come in? Because the bill clearly says from the Mattole to San Pablo Bay.
It has been defined differently, yes, since the clarification was that the Eel River watershed south, essentially, in the 5 county regions. Doesn't include all 5 of the counties.
But the Mattole is north of the Eel River.
I understand that.
So they added the Mattole in, took the Eel out, and then added the rest in?
The original definition was that, yes. And then the Eel River essentially south, and I don't know if we have maps with us, we can show you the exact delineation of the
Well, I know
of the
where the
areas.
Mattole and the Eel is.
But
and the Mattole is north of the Eel.
I understand that.
So, and that's what the bill said from the Mattole south.
Right, but there is
There's an amendment to that bill? Or?
no, there's not an amendment to the bill, but there's further definition of the 5 county region that we're to address in the AB 2121 policy.
Why would they leave the Eel out?
Perhaps I can ask Eric to respond.
Sure. We're kind of getting the cart before the horse here, and I want this question addressed, and then we'll get back to